to have a double whammy like cancer and a stillbirth really made me pause. Like, it made me reevaluate how my nervous system was handling all of this, how I had spent the majority of my 20s just so, anxiety riddled and stressed. And I have a lot of childhood trauma that I've worked through. And for me, the biggest shift that I've had to make in these months after Oliver's death is the perspective that I have on life is so different.
Welcome to The Rainbow Connection. This podcast was designed for mothers who are finding their way through life after loss. Whether you're grieving, trying to conceive again, newly pregnant, or holding hope in your heart for what's to come, this space is for you. Each week, you'll hear real and tender stories of love, heartbreak, healing, and the babies who continue to shape us. I'm your host, Kristen Mundy, a mother, doula, and a woman who's walked this path too. May these conversations remind you that you are not alone, that your baby is never forgotten, and that hope and grief can live here together. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to tell you about Mother Like No Other, a special community for women who are navigating the tender season of life after loss. Inside Mother Like No Other, you'll find a warm, supportive space of moms who truly get it, plus practical tools to help you through the hard days. You'll have access to a private online community where you can connect with me, an experienced doula, and other moms navigating the same journey. Each month, we gather for live workshops to connect and learn, covering topics like supporting your fertility journey, grounding strategies, self-advocacy, and ways to nurture your mind, body, and soul. We also bring in guest speakers to share their expertise and inspiration. The best part? It's only $22 a month. No long-term commitment, just real support when you need it most. If you're ready to feel more grounded, connected, and held through this season, come join us at thedoulalife.ca/mother. You do not have to go through this journey alone. And by joining us inside Mother Like No Other, you won't have to. Today on The Rainbow Connection, I'm sitting down with Channing Hart, a mother whose story holds both unimaginable heartbreak and extraordinary resilience. And I mean incredible resilience. Channing's journey includes the loss of her first son, Leo, after a devastating diagnosis of Jacob's syndrome, and the stillbirth of her second son, Oliver, amidst a journey marked by IUGR, reverse blood flow, and a surprise, life-altering thyroid cancer diagnosis. Through every twist in her story, Channing has shown a fierce devotion to her babies and a deep commitment to seeking connection, understanding, and healing. In this conversation, she opens her heart fully, sharing the choices no parent should ever have to face, the love that continues beyond loss, and the tender hope she's beginning to hold for her future. Channing's story is really so important, and I am so grateful for her bravery in sharing with us today and giving us a glimpse into her world. I am so honored to share it with you. Okay, now enough from me. Let's hear from Channing. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Rainbow Connection. Today, I am sitting down with Channing. Hi, Channing. Thanks so much for being here.
Hi, Kristen. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. I'm looking forward to chatting with Channing today and having, sharing a conversation. We actually are getting to work together in a small capacity right now in my Mother Like No Other group, and we'll probably dig into that later. But Channing is going to share a little bit about her story. This girl has been on a journey, and she's going to share all about it with us and share her angel babies with us today. But before we dive into that, Channing, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your family?
Sure. Well, I live in a suburb right outside of DC with my husband and our 2 cats. I work as an executive assistant for Scout Bags, a tote bag company, and the past 2-ish years have been just such a roller coaster. And so my desire to share my story and, have connection with others is so strong through what I've been through and has been so healing for me on my journey. So that's really the impetus into, wanting to be on the podcast. And, I've been so lucky to have, found you via social media and join your group. And so, yeah, that's a very high level nutshell.
All right. Well, we'd love to hear more about that story and your journey. Why don't you tell us or start off kind of where, that began?
Yeah. So, my husband and I got married in April of 2023, and I decided to get off birth control January of 2023, but we were, being careful and apparently not careful enough because I took a pregnancy test in November of 2023 and we were pregnant, and it was a bit of a surprise. It was much wanted. We were so excited, so naive, as, so many are with their first pregnancies. I felt really good. Throughout the entire pregnancy, I was in great shape from the wedding, and I didn't have any morning sickness. And I was, I just thought, like, oh, the pregnancy is like great. This is a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
Like, what are people complaining about?
Yeah, what are people complaining about? So I had, as I said, like no morning sickness. I was very tired, very hungry. Otherwise, that's it. And we did the genetic testing, like so many of my friends and family had done. So it was just, we didn't know any different. And that test, tests for certain chromosome abnormalities. It also tells you the gender. You take it at around 10 weeks. And at 11 weeks, we got a call from our OB, and I just, I've never been through this. So I was like, oh, she's calling me to tell me the gender of my baby. And she was really calling because there was an abnormality. And
is that something that even like entered your mind at that point when you were taking
No.
the test? Like, were you feeling anxious at all about it?
No, no one in my world had ever gotten something abnormal on these tests. So I just thought it was like, oh, just routine, but didn't think anything of it. And I think that's when I say I was so naive, I was extremely naive with my first pregnancy. I was like, all right, like, let's just let this roll. So she had said, do you want to find out the gender? Because this chromosome abnormality and what we found is gender specific. So Leo had XYY. He had an extra Y chromosome. So boys have XY, girls have XX, and he had an extra Y. It is called Jacob's syndrome. We learned a lot about it, and there is a range of long-term effects that it can have on somebody. Lots of people, do live with an extra Y chromosome. Some people don't even know it. I learned it's 1 in 10,000. So what we really needed to determine was, of course you want to know, well, how severe is it going to be? Like, is the most severe cases of Jacob's syndrome is nonverbal autistic. And we needed some sort of clarity in terms of the quality of life that Leo would have. That was the only way we could make informed decisions about, what we were going to do. Terminating for medical reasons was put on the table fairly early. We met with a genetic counselor who was going through all of those options with us. So it was a lot to wrap your head around as a first pregnancy.
Yeah.
So we did a CVS procedure, which is similar to amniocentesis. They take a huge needle in your abdomen and take out cells from the placenta. And we got that back, and it was confirmed that he had a full Y chromosome, extra Y chromosome. Some people have mosaics, which is like a chopped up Y chromosome, but they were pretty sure that because he had a full Y, that it would be on the more severe spectrum. And at that point, I was, I'm a young professional. There was so much that I still wanted to do. And the thought of we really had to sit with ourselves and think about, like, we could have a, severely disabled child. And when push comes to shove, like, I would have to leave the workforce and I would have to, caretake for my son. And the biggest thing where, my husband and I went back and forth was I wouldn't be able to live with myself bringing a child into this world knowing what I knew. The guilt that I would have bringing him into this world and him facing the challenges that he would ultimately face, as well as the quality of life that he would have, that made the decision. That was really the, like, guiding light for us.
I'm not, like, entirely well versed on Jacob syndrome, but I've had a few clients that, have their babies have also been diagnosed with Jacob syndrome. And from my understanding, my very limited understanding, is that there can also be a lot of, like, severe health problems as well, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So there are certain physical attributes with Jacob syndrome. They're a lot taller. Their eyes are a little further apart. They have trouble fertility issues down the road, likely. There is a huge indicator that they would, or there's an indication that they would have a lot of aggression, which is one of the characteristics that many Jacob syndrome children have, or, developmental delays. The list goes on, but the more that we looked into it and the more that our families looked into it, we were like, this is, how could we do this to him, bringing him into this world, living a very difficult life? So ultimately, we decided to terminate for medical reasons. We decided that at around 14 weeks, and I live in, the capital of the United States, and I never knew this until I decided to do it, but there is, a lag time when you can get the D&C or D&E procedure. And so I actually, with him, there was a 2-week wait. Which was very difficult, but it did give us the time to really determine, like, do we really want to do this? And by the end, we were pretty set on that this was the right decision for us as a family. So I got a D&E at 16 weeks with Leo. I just remember going in, I still feel somewhat of a level of guilt, and you'll always kind of back and forth. Was it the right decision? Was it not? But as I get into my story with Oliver, you make the best decision you can in the situation that you're, like, given. There's no right choice.
And sometimes it doesn't feel like a choice, right? Like,
no, it didn't feel like a choice to us. I had never felt grief before, like that type of grief. I, was really having, body issues with the fact that I was, like, 16 weeks pregnant and I had gained weight. I didn't have anything to show for it. I, felt I shied away from sharing our story with Leo because of the decision. And, there's such a stigma around it, unfortunately. And there was a stigma around it with some family members and, friends. And, I had to respect their decisions to, not necessarily agree with us, but I, expected them to respect our decision. They don't have to agree. But for the most part, everybody wrapped their arms around us and really supported us. And I just couldn't believe that was my first experience, like, with pregnancy. So,
well, I think people have this misconception that even though we know it wasn't a choice, that because you chose it, I'm doing quotations for those
Yeah.
people that are listening in, that it's not hard, but it is exceptionally hard. And there is a lot of added grief. Obviously, you loved this baby and wanted something completely different for them. For the people that are like refusing to see it or support it or just not agree with it, I think there is a really huge missing link in terms of the support and care that you deserved after this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it was definitely very difficult. We terminated in February of 2024. And immediately I was like, well, it's easy for me to get pregnant. We're just going to get pregnant again once, we're cleared. And that's exactly what we did. And so we got pregnant with Oliver in August of 2024. We got pregnant relatively easy again without any intervention. And my anxiety was at an all-time high because I just, one, couldn't believe I got pregnant again, and two, I was so scared about something happening
Well,
again.
because now you know, right?
Now you
That
know.
that that like ignorance is gone.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very different pregnancy, and I was convinced that I was having a girl because I was so sick. And 6 weeks in, I would say I was just feeling so many different symptoms than I did with Leo.
Mm-hmm.
And so my, team of doctors knew I was very nervous. I went in for blood work just to make sure that this was like a viable pregnancy and that all my levels were rising and, at a good, we're good. And I'll never forget it. My husband and I were sitting in our doctor's office, and they hadn't even taken the blood work yet. And at that time, I was 6 weeks pregnant, and she took one look at my neck, and she could see a lump that I had never noticed. She went straight for my neck, started feeling around my thyroid, and she felt a nodule. Not anything that we were expecting that day. We were expecting to talk about a pregnancy, but I got an ultrasound of my neck that afternoon. That turned into a biopsy, and at 8 weeks pregnant, I was diagnosed with papillary thyroid carcinoma, which I just could not believe. The blood work came back fine. It was a healthy pregnancy, but I had cancer, and that's when I just kind of like looked within and just could not believe that this was happening. Like,
Of course.
just until you are diagnosed with cancer, you really don't know the like shock that goes through your system of like, am I going to die? Like, what does my treatment look like? I knew nothing about thyroid cancer. Nobody in my great grandmother had it. Otherwise, my thyroid, what really shocked us was that my full thyroid panels, prior to getting pregnant with Oliver, during my cancer, were all fine. All my levels were fine. So you don't necessarily, need to have bad levels to indicate that you have cancer. It was, a 2 centimeter tumor that had grown for I don't know how long. So it was, it shakes you to your core with a diagnosis like that. And immediately I was like, well, what happens to me? What happens to my baby? I was so incredibly lucky to have the connections that I do in this city I got diagnosed with cancer on a Friday, and on a Monday I was meeting with the chief of endocrine surgery at the biggest hospital in Washington, D.C. So for that, I will always be grateful. My community just like wrapped their arms around me again and just really showed up. So we spent a majority of my pregnancy, one, figuring out if the pregnancy was viable, which it was, and seeing if I needed surgery in the second trimester. When you possibly need surgery during pregnancy, second trimester is the best time to do it. So it was a lot of testing. I was transferred to an MFM at that point in the hospital that I was going to deliver at, and the 12-week scan was great. We really did remain optimistic that I was going to be able to have this baby. And we also determined that the tumor was, stable. We, looked at it for about 3 to 4 months and determined it was stable. It never grew to my lymph nodes, which I'm so lucky. And so the surgery could wait. So at around 16 weeks, they do an OBGYN typically does a AFP test, which is alpha fetoprotein level. It checks the protein level in the mother, and mine was elevated. That can mean a lot of things. That can mean preeclampsia, intrauterine growth restriction. It can mean a lot of things, and you monitor it. We did, it was just right above the high level. We did it again, and it was getting a little bit higher. So at that point, I was diagnosed with IUGR at around 16 weeks with Oliver. And I had friends who had delivered with IUGR babies. And, I was like, all right, like, we're just going to do this. Like, if anything, he is going to be delivered early. And I was okay with that. So we kept monitoring because with IUGR, you just don't know how severe it's going to get. And we continue to closely monitor his growth. And
Do you remember what like percentile he was at this point?
Yeah. So at 16 weeks, we did a preliminary anatomy scan
early
at
anatomy.
16 weeks. Yeah. And he was at the 4th percentile.
Okay.
Which in hindsight, I was like, I probably should have been more worried, but I was like, oh, it's going to be fine. And at our 20-week, he was around he was between the 1st and the 3rd. And there was, they said, you need to come back in 2 weeks and we need to do some rescans. And that's when our world just crumbled, was at around 22 and a half weeks. We went in for another scan and Oliver was under the 1st percentile. And the blood flow going from my umbilical cord to him was going into reverse.
Okay.
So we had determined that was the reason why he wasn't growing, was because he wasn't getting the proper blood flow. And I'll never forget, our MFM, everybody at that office, had knew what we were going through, knew about Leo, knew about my cancer. And I mean, the ultrasound tech, all the color drained from her face. My MFM was in tears telling us that this was, a really serious situation. And my husband and I looked at each other and we just could not believe it. Yet again, a catastrophic situation was occurring.
Just another big blow.
Yeah. And, with a serious situation like blood flow going into reverse, I was transferred. So the hospital that we were going to deliver at does not have a level 4 NICU. They also do not take babies before 32 weeks. We were only 23 weeks. So at that point, my MFM transferred us to the same hospital where I was getting my cancer treatment. My endocrine surgeon was based out of. So we went from one hospital to another. We came home, packed our bags because I was like, I may be delivering right now. That was kind of the naive, I was naive about what was about to happen because I had never gone through it. So, and nobody has a playbook to give me.
So a lot of it is it's a wait and see, right?
It's a wait and see.
Yeah.
So we packed our bags, packed a bag, went to the new hospital, was introduced to my new MFM. I was in labor and delivery. And at that point, he had a strong heartbeat. He was still moving around. And with a reverse blood flow situation, they give you about 2 weeks. They say like you have about 2 weeks until, things really take a turn. So at that point, we had a lot of options on the table. We, at that point he was too small to deliver. So I was given like steroid shots that helped his lung and brain development in the event that we did deliver in a couple of weeks. We met our neonatologist. We met the NICU team. We were just meeting. I mean, what we thought was going to be an hour appointment turned into the rest of the night, like the day, the night. And at that point, the only thing to do was I could either be admitted to the hospital and monitored. I could go home and be on bed rest and come in every 2 days for scans with my MFM, which is what I decided to do. At that point, they would have strapped a monitor on me, admitted me. I would have lived at the hospital for I don't know how long. And at that point, all I wanted to do was go home and rest.
Yeah.
So I'm from South Carolina. So my husband's family, he's a Maryland native, and we live very close to his family. My family does not live close. So I called my mom immediately, and she took the next flight out and stayed with us for 3 weeks through all of it, which I'm just so grateful that I had that support. But basically over the 2 weeks, his heart rate was good. The blood flow was still going into reverse, but we just needed more time. And that was the biggest thing, was we needed more time, and it was time we didn't have. We got scan after scan. Our MFM is incredible. She's still working with us to this day and did everything she could. I do remember the head of the NICU department at the largest hospital in DC. He had a phone call with my husband and I and basically said, listen, like, this is going to be really difficult for us to, one, intubate him at the size that he's at. So with intrauterine growth restriction, the gestational age and the actual, as I said, he was under the first percentile. So he was measuring 4-ish weeks earlier than what his gestational age was. So at that point, the NICU team was not confident they'd even be able to intubate him. So again, it was, waiting and waiting and waiting. We saw like a pediatric cardiologist who determined his heart was really strong, but it was just a lot of waiting and hoping and praying and just, trying to, one, understand why this was happening to us, but two, remain optimistic that this might work out. And at that point, we were going into for scans every other day, every 2 days. And by the end, it showed that my amniotic fluid was just draining. Like, I didn't have a lot of amniotic fluid left. The scans were getting worse and worse. And we had a scan on Valentine's Day, which is actually my husband and I's the same day that we got engaged. And we went in that morning, and Oliver did not have a heartbeat, which was just soul crushing. I knew I started to not feel him as much a couple days before, but I didn't want to believe it. It also was my husband's birthday on February 12th. So we all had a very normal dinner that night. I just wanted normalcy. I was, we were dealing with such a serious situation that we all sat around the table eating birthday cake. And that's how I wanted it. And it was soul crushing, but at the same time, at the point that we didn't hear Oliver's heartbeat, at that point I was exhausted. I was exhausted from making all these decisions. I was exhausted carrying a baby that likely would not survive. So we left the doctor's office, and I immediately got a call from the hospital. And the biggest decision that we had to wrestle with from when we didn't hear his heartbeat until, he was born was whether I was going to, go through labor and delivery, or I was going to get another D&E, because while he was 26 weeks or 25 weeks at that time, he was only measuring around 20-21 weeks. So I still was on the cusp to be able to receive a D&E. Otherwise, if he would have been, a little bit bigger, it would have been the labor and delivery route. So honestly, that was, I remember just like sitting with my husband, wrestling the decision. My immediate decision was I wanted to meet him. I wanted to see him. I wanted to, labor and deliver. But a really good point that my husband and my mom made, they were like, you're so exhausted. You're not even making an informed decision. You, one, have cancer. You, two, are 26 weeks pregnant. And you had just gone through hell and back to make all these decisions for him. And I kept saying, he's put out of his misery now. He's in a better place. That's what my family wanted for me. They wanted me to be put out of my misery and for this to be all over for me. And to put my body through labor and delivery seemed, it seemed really difficult for the physical stage that I was in, with my cancer. And so we decided to have a D&E at 26 weeks. And for me, I still, hold a good amount of guilt and regret. And that's something I'm working through. But our MFM had said, listen, you don't have any amniotic fluid left. He's not going to look like the baby that you think he's going to look like. And there's not a right decision. And, when you become a mother, whether to an angel baby or an earthside baby, there's so many decisions you have to make. And for me, there was never going to be a right decision with this. This was a cruel and unfair situation that we were in yet again. So, yeah, so my body was tired. I was, exhausted, and all I wanted was for peace. And, we got that post-surgery. I, went home, and I just remember sleeping for 2 days. I just was my body was so exhausted. And we did decide, he does have a death certificate. We cremated him. We have his footprints. We also we have Leo's footprints and handprints. So, just because I got a D&E both times and never physically saw my children, they are real. They are absolutely real. And
yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think a lot of people, they don't realize that they have options. Even if they go with the D&E, you still can get hand and footprints. You still can go through cremation and get, a death certificate. And I think that's a really important point to kind of emphasize.
Yeah, absolutely.
While we take a quick break, I want to introduce you to The Haven, my signature support program for mothers who are pregnant again after miscarriage, TFMR, stillbirth, or infant loss. This is not just a course. The Haven is a trauma-informed community program that includes weekly live workshops, expert guest speakers, and ongoing support from me, an experienced doula and fellow loss mom, anytime you need it. You'll also receive one-on-one check-ins, guided journaling prompts, full access to my birth course, Reclaim, and a warm, intimate community of other pal mothers, a place where you can be real, be held, and be reminded that you are not alone in this. Enrollment inside the Haven is now open, and support is available to walk with you throughout your entire pregnancy. From the moment you see those 2 pink lines, all the way until your baby is tucked safely into your arms. If you've been longing for a place to feel safe, feel seen, and be supported throughout
the weeks following, all I wanted was, a reason why this happened. Like, why was my blood flow going into reverse? Like, why did this happen? So when they deliver a stillborn, they can do an autopsy. They can, they do take your placenta to pathology. And when they took my placenta to pathology, they found a 5 centimeter blood clot that had been growing, which explained why my blood flow was going into reverse.
At that point where you're like, well, why do I have the 5 centimeter blood clot? Because every, discovery kind of leads to like more questions, right?
Yeah. And if anybody knows me, they know I'm very strong-willed when it comes to, figuring it out and needing the answer. So my MFM, we immediately did a full panel to determine if I had a blood clotting disorder. And I don't.
Okay.
I don't have an autoimmune issue that causes blood clots. I don't have a blood clotting disorder. They determined my cancer was not the culprit. Like there was not a correlation between my tumor and the pregnancy. So similar to XYY, where we were like, well, how did this happen? Like, does my husband have, is this genetic? Like, because it's a Y chromosome, which my husband has a Y chromosome. So unfortunately, I'll probably be asking why this happened for the rest of my life. But for now, the answers that we have are just going to have to be good enough, or else I would just drive myself insane, I think.
Totally. Did you and your husband like go through any other investigations, or like did he go through? Because I know a lot of the time it's like the mom that's going through all of the picking and prodding, poking and prodding. And, there's a lot of evidence now that's coming out that, it's actually the husband has a really large impact on the health of the placenta and the development of the placenta. So
absolutely. Yeah. With Leo, immediately we wanted to determine where the Y came. Obviously the Y came from my husband, but why and how does this happen? And so with Leo, essentially at time of conception, an extra Y chromosome slipped in. That's the simplest way to explain it. My husband and I both went through genetic testing, to determine that there was nothing that we passed on to these kids. And with Oliver, the same thing. We went through all of this testing just to make sure that, it wasn't either one of us, because we were left with 2 angel babies and we could get pregnant easily. We just couldn't keep pregnancies. So was that, what was going on with that? And, the biggest thing is, and I'm sure a lot of other mothers who have had multiple losses can relate. Sometimes there is a pattern and you can find the culprit of, why this is happening multiple times. With us, it was both of the situations were so different. So it was, the best way to
like lightning
yes.
struck you, right?
And I say that all the time. I say lightning struck us twice. And so,
well, I definitely can relate because that's exactly what in our story, our doctor told us, right? Because like my 2 angel babies, like there was no similarities whatsoever. They were totally 2 different things and totally by chance, by lightning. And there's just no words to describe like, oh, great.
It doesn't make it any
right?
easier. Like you're like, oh, thank you. Like, is that supposed to make me feel better?
You're like, I really wish, my form of lightning was like winning the lottery or something, right? Like, why is this my form of lightning? Like, just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So the only similarities, there is, a lot of connections with my story. The biggest one was that, we lost Leo on February 20th of 2024. We lost Oliver, or both of their birthdays are, Leo's is February 20th, 2024, and Oliver's is February 19th of 2025. So, Leo was supposed to be born in August. Oliver was supposed to be born in May, and they'll always be brothers. And, the only comfort I have is that they have each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what's gotten me through is that, especially right now, I should be on maternity leave.
Mm-hmm.
I should have a 12-week-old right now, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't. And that has been the hardest part, is you sit with your reality and you sit with what should have been. And for me, I should have a baby right now, and I don't. I should have two, but I should really, the gravity with Oliver, and how far along we were. We had scheduled my baby shower. We were about to send out invites that week. There were things that had been put in place that there wasn't so much with Leo. So,
Well, it's especially different because, Oliver was a healthy baby boy.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
His genetic testing came back, no chromosome abnormalities, which after that 10-week point where we got it and we were like, whoo, like no chromosome abnormalities, like this is, great.
We're in the
like,
clear. Yeah.
We're in the clear for sure. And now I am so keenly aware that you're never in the clear. And through the different support groups that I've joined, through the community of women that I've, connected with through like stillbirth and miscarriages, and as well as cancer during pregnancy, which, I have been very involved in, that community as well. It all chalks up to just being so cruel and unfair. And I don't think you'll ever get there'll never be a good reason why this happened. And, as somebody who, to have a double whammy like cancer and a stillbirth really made me pause. Like it made me reevaluate how my nervous system was, handling all of this, how I had, spent the majority of my 20s just so, anxiety riddled and stressed. And I have a lot of like childhood trauma that I've worked through, and I know the benefits, of meditation and acupuncture and massage and eating organically and healthy and clean and, living in a low toxic household. So really the stillbirth and the cancer made me stop in my tracks because I was like, wait a second, if I'm
doing everything right.
I'm doing everything right. And for me, the biggest shift that I've had to make in these months after Oliver's death is the perspective that I have on life is so different. And the way that I handle certain situations and what used to stress me out doesn't stress me out anymore because it's really not a big deal. If I've learned anything, you don't have anything without your health. And so originally, to kind of wrap up my cancer journey, because there is a, rainbow at the end of this storm, luckily, we lost Oliver. And at that point, we had determined during my pregnancy with Oliver that we would wait until like about 8 to 10 weeks after he was born to have the surgery, the total thyroidectomy, to remove my tumor and to remove my thyroid. At that point, timeline was pushed up after he was born. And another, I don't find it a coincidence at all, is that, my surgeon's availability happened to be, the week was May 14th, which was about a week before what would have been his due date. So it was a really healing experience for me. I had a successful surgery and I spent 2 weeks about 2 to 3 weeks on medical leave. And in that point, I was able to not only heal, but I grieved, what would have been Oliver's due date. And I really, even though there was a lot happening in that point and I was recovering from a major surgery, I had the time to, stop and pause, and I wasn't working. There was this like stillness that I had needed, which I found so incredibly healing. And
kind of the universe like forcing you
yeah,
we're going to face this. Like we're going to sit in this for a while.
Yeah. And we had the surgery. I got my testing done to make sure my thyroid levels were in a good place. I did have my full thyroid removed. My surgeon was happy that we decided to do a total thyroidectomy because when she went in there, my thyroid was not in a good place. It was functioning, but physically, the look of it, she was like, it was not serving you for many, many years. And as somebody who was raised homeopathically and I know all the benefits of alternative medicine, I was pretty, sure that I wasn't about to try to like cure my cancer myself when I just lost a child.
Totally.
I was also, if something was not serving me anymore, there was not a huge shift that I was going to be able to, move mountains here to make my thyroid look and feel better.
Like, let's just take the path from A to B, please. Like,
right. And that's,
yeah.
And of course my mother was like, there's so many other ways, we went back and forth and I was like, I'm aware of that. I am very, keenly aware that there are other ways, but this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm choosing to do. And I, stayed very clear and I trusted my surgeons. I trusted my endocrinologist. I trusted my MFM, my OB. They were all a part of this decision. And so I'm very happy to report that when they took it out, it was a clean, removal. It had stayed around 2 centimeters the entire time that I was diagnosed to removing the tumor. And at this time, I don't need radiation, and I can officially say I'm cancer-free, which is just, the biggest. If
It's
anything,
a big deal.
It's a huge deal. And, if anything good has come out of this year, it's been that I have like conquered this. And I feel I was a little nervous about you need to be on a replacement medication for the rest of your life. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time. And so I had heard these stories from other people who had gotten a total thyroidectomy. For me, my surgeon, put me on a dosage she thought was correct. It ended up being correct. And I feel amazing. Like I think I didn't realize how fatigued I was, how anxious I was, how my nervous system was being affected. And in this day and age, everybody's talking about endocrine, disruptors and, your nervous system and how important it is. And so for me, I mean, it really tested all of that through all of this experience. So all of these experiences. So
in my mind, I'm thinking like, if you never got pregnant with Leo, if you never lost Leo, would you ever have worked with an MFM? Would an MFM ever see that lump in your throat? Would you ever have gotten that cancer diagnosis? Like, there's so many things that obviously the path to getting that cancer diagnosis was horrible. And if we could have chosen a better path, that would have been great. But here I am thinking, like, putting all the pieces together, that doctor found you in the right time and the right place. And like, it hadn't had spread yet. Like, what would have happened if you weren't in that clinic?
Yeah.
That's one thing that I'm like saying in my head as I'm listening to you talk.
Absolutely. And I mean, both the babies, especially Oliver, like I want him here with us more than anything, but he was brought into our lives to like show me that I had cancer essentially, which sends shivers down my spine sometimes. Like he will always be that like guardian angel for me. And yeah, it just, I mean, it takes my breath away, honestly.
Totally. What does, life look like for you and your husband now? What were kind of your next steps? You're cancer-free. What does life look like now?
Yeah, so a big part of, our healing journey was, I needed to take a pause. Unlike after Leo, we were just ready to jump back in. And I needed, a pause. Obviously, the cancer, surgery made us pause, which was great. But even after the surgery, when I was cleared, to try to conceive again, I was like, that just seems very scary to me right now. And I remember saying, well,
and it was May and the summer's coming up. It's like, okay,
I want to enjoy my
summer. This is a great time to just kind of be present for a while and not be like in the throes of trauma.
Yeah.
Right?
The beach is very healing to my husband and I. It's our favorite place, and we have been fortunate to go on, many trips with family. And I'm from the beach in South Carolina, and you know, we needed that time. We needed that time to kind of decompress and have that relaxation, and you
Find some
know,
joy
uh,
again.
definitely.
Feel the
And
sun, like
yeah,
just like
yeah,
live, right?
right.
Well, especially because you had just beaten cancer. Like, can we take a minute just to absorb what that is and like cherish this life? It's so, yeah, I can
Absolutely.
only imagine what that
Absolutely.
must have felt like.
Yeah, so I also needed time to, these were vacations and trips that Oliver was supposed to be on, and I needed to kind of go through those and feel those feelings. And
Hmm.
we have spread some of his ashes, and that was a really healing moment to be at beaches that meant a lot to, like, places and beaches that meant a lot to my husband and I, and to be able to, share it with Oliver, unfortunately, in a very different way than we
Hmm.
pictured.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, right now, as I mentioned, I go to therapy. Do acupuncture once a week. There's a lot of things that I'm doing to keep me in a good mental state. Of course, I have feelings that flare up, as, every mother who's had a loss does. The biggest one was, we were sitting on the beach and you see babies and you wish yours was with you. And yeah, I mean, it's been 6 months, roughly 6 months, and I am learning how to hold my grief and hope in the same, place. I'm so hopeful that I know, because I'm stubborn that way. I know we will have a family,
Hmm.
and this journey has not looked anything like we thought it would, but it's our story. And my biggest thing is, the connections that I've made, even the research studies that I'm a part of now, all of that connection has helped me so much to, not only, share my story and spread awareness, but also help me so much on my healing journey, because I know so many people. I decided to share our loss of Oliver on social media, and the amount of people that, messaged me and reached out, talking about their situations and their experiences. And, connection is so important when you go through tragedy,
Hmm.
any sort of tragedy. And I have this really strong pull to, want to give back and want to share my story. And if my stories help somebody else, then there is a silver lining to all of this.
Well, I'm sure there's somebody listening right now that is definitely feeling validated and
Yeah.
seen. And, I just posted yesterday on Instagram how like sharing our stories is not just like healing in an emotional sense. It's literally physically healing, sharing your story, not just for you, but the people that are listening as well. So you are part of, that collective healing now by sharing, Oliver's and Leo's story on here.
Yeah, I do think that, grief will never go away. It's learning how to live with it. And, finding connection. Like, isolation was never an option for me. Like, I had to connect. And during the situations, there were so many instances where we connected with, other families who were going through something similar. And, with cancer, I was connected with like a peer support group, where it was like one-on-one peer support of a mother who had gone through thyroid cancer during pregnancy. And just
Mm.
knowing that all of these resources are out there and truly has made, this journey not any less difficult, but it has helped me so much, to the point where, we're in a place where we are ready to try to conceive again. And
Mhm.
that feels really good. Like, to feel mentally strong enough. I'm absolutely terrified. I was just telling somebody else, I don't ever want to be pregnant again. And,
Mhm.
I want my baby, wrapped in a bow, dropped on my
Just to be
doorstep.
here. Yeah. Like, can we skip this part? I always
Yeah.
think of that that like reel where it's like, can we skip to the good part? Like,
Yeah.
that would be really nice.
Yeah.
That'd be really nice.
And I'm like, the story of the stork, like bringing the baby down. That's how I want it. Like, I don't want to go through, I think the biggest test that I'm going to, what my next chapter looks like is, trying to conceive and then really sitting with all the anxieties and that come with the weight of when you get pregnant and.
Well, there's going to be resources for you too during that, right? And
Oh,
that's like
yes,
one
there
big thing that I talk
is.
about a lot. So,
Yes.
pregnancy after loss is a different beast. It is exceptionally hard, but there are resources. And just like you found the resources for, cancer when you're pregnant is exceptionally hard. And you've done that. And I have no doubt that you're going to do this too. I like that feisty spirit that this baby's coming. It's going to serve you. It really is. And that's your motherhood showing up, right? You are already a fierce mama you're already taking those steps to your baby. So
Yeah.
we see you, and we're going to have
you.
you come back on when you get there and share all about that journey.
I would love
We're going
to
be watching you, and I'm sure everyone listening is, that can relate to your story is going to be watching you, and we'll have to share those resources in the show notes of your supports, even with your cancer and with some of the support groups you had. We'll for sure have to share those in the notes too, because I'm sure someone else would really benefit from those. So
absolutely.
Now, Channing, I have one question for you before we wrap up. I'm curious how you honor Oliver in your everyday life. What does it look like him being a part of your family right now?
So the biggest thing for me is that I talk about him very openly. And that's a really hard thing to do when you are a lost mom because you don't have the like physical baby. But for us, I talk about my journey. I talk about my struggles. I'm very open about it all. And I think that's been, the biggest way to celebrate him. When he passed, there was a company email that I approved to like go out to our company because I just wanted to, celebrate him and, cherish him. And it's things like this. It's things like being on this podcast that celebrate him. And of course, there's like jewelry. There's so many different ways that you can celebrate your, angel babies. And for me, celebrating him has looked, different. We grappled with doing like some sort of celebration of life. But for me, it's really, we made a custom box for him, and it has all of my wristbands from the hospital. It has, his footprints. It has Leo's footprints. It has his ashes. It has all of the cards that we were, sent to us. And it has some dried flowers. It's a memory box, and there may not be like an open shrine to Oliver or to Leo, but that box really is kind of like the hub of where we celebrate our boys. And that was an extremely important thing for me to do, was just have it all the keepsakes in one spot. So yeah, I'm still celebrating him. I'm in that season of life where there are so many of my friends giving birth right now who are currently pregnant, who, I am so happy for them. And, I never want them to withhold that from me. But it is, it's the gut punch every time you get, you hear that somebody else is pregnant and somebody else has given birth. And for me, it's more celebrating that I am a mom too. Even though I don't have children earthside, I am a mother too. And the sensitivity that I receive when, somebody pulls me aside and tells me that they're pregnant and, they don't want to surprise me, or they want to be very sensitive towards the fact of, you don't have to come to the baby shower. For me, celebrating Oliver has been going to the baby showers and seeing the babies who were born in April, May, June, July, who would have been, his neighborhood friends and his pals. So for me, it's celebrating him in so many different ways, and I do it all the time, and I'm not ashamed. And I think that's been the biggest unlock to my healing journey has been celebrating him through, all of life's little joys, because there is so much joy still.
Totally. It's just like an everyday woven in, right? It's just everyday woven in. I like the quote where it's like, happy for them, sad for me.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm so happy for everybody when they tell me they're pregnant. And then about 20 minutes later, I'm bawling my eyes out because I'm so sad that, Oliver's not with us. But that doesn't.
And I think that's totally valid and okay. Yeah. And it's that whole, analogy of like hope and grief in both hands, like happiness and sadness in either other hand. And you can feel a whole complexity of emotions all at the same time. And you don't have to just stay, sad. You can also be happy at the same time. And, that's definitely sounds like a huge lesson that Oliver's taught you. And
for me, finding the little joys, even though Oliver's passed and I got diagnosed with cancer, there are so many reasons to live and so many reasons to keep going. So, and that's how I celebrate him, is I keep going for my sons and
and for yourself.
And for myself. Yes, absolutely.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Well, I think that's a beautiful place to wrap it up, Channing. And I just want to thank you so much for being here and sharing your heart and your story and your boys with us. You've been on a journey, like I said at the very beginning, and that journey's still going. And we're all going to be watching you and cheering you on and, just lifting you up and sending you all the love in the world and hope in the world. And just so proud of you for coming on and sharing your voice and being part of the healing collective. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to connect more, Instagram is where I hang out most. So come join me in a beautiful community of lost moms for pregnancy after loss education, real life grief talk, and deep solidarity. You can find me at the.doula.life and at the Rainbow Connection podcast. And remember, you are never alone. I'll see you in the next episode.